Hi everyone, welcome to Arpita's NCERT Kaksha. Today we are going to start with class 12th NCERT chapter number 3, Politics of Planned Development. This chapter is really important because so far we have studied how India struggled after independence, how we struggled consolidating our nation, how we struggled to manage the diversity of population that we had. And then after managing all of that, all the territories, the states, etc., we had another struggle, another challenge. That was the development, how the development of this nation should take place. Because there were different kind of development models existing in the world at that time. The capitalist model, the socialist model, the communist model. So India had a very big challenge according to the diversity of our population, according to the needs and the tradition and culture of our nation, which kind of model should we adopt to develop our nation, to develop not just the nation economically but socially also, culturally also. So there were so many challenges and so many questions, and that is why we are going to study how our constitution makers, how our leaders dealt with this challenge, and how we arrived to the model of development that we currently follow, which is the mixed economy model of development. We are going to study all of this in detail. Please make sure that you have your notes registered with you to take down the notes in the lecture, and to understand and analyze, please pay full attention throughout the lecture. Let's get started. Now we know that on January 26, 1950, our constitution came into force, and following that, the planning in India began on March 15, 1950, with the establishment of the Planning Commission. And the plan era, it started from April 1st, 1951, wherein our government launched the first 5-year plan. 5-year plan हमारी गवर्नमेंट ने स्टार्ट किया है लॉन्च करना 1951 से. तो पहले 5-year plan 1951 से 56 के बीच तक चले थे. We are going to study the 5-year plans also, don't worry. Now, when we talk about planning, our constitution, when it came into existence, our constitution did not just talk about the fundamental rights or the directive principles or the duties, etc. But it also talked about the planning. Because if you plan, only then you will have a concrete idea of what you want to pursue in life. Without planning, we end up failing. Why? Because plan gives us a roadmap. There are so many steps which are involved in achieving our goals. If you want to reach up to the 14th floor of a building, you have to either go by steps or you can either take the elevator, right? So there also, this process also involves planning. Either you should take the steps because, taking the steps is good for health, or you should take the elevator because, you basically turn breathless when you step on the stairs. So this is how planning is important to reach to the final destination. If you want to prepare for UPSC, here also immense planning is required. Without planning, just by guesswork, just by stepping into the preparation zone, you cannot clear this exam. Because this exam itself has been created in steps. A plan mode has been taken by the UPSC, basically members to create this exam. There is the preliminary stage, there is the main stage, there is the interview stage. And even in the preliminary and main stage, there are papers which are qualifying in nature. Once you qualify those papers, only then you can, move ahead into the next stage. So here also planning is required. How will you qualify prelims paper? How will you qualify mains? How will you perform in the interview? So all of this requires planning. Even when a child is born, the parents start planning before the child is born. Now, in today's time, the parents, after they get married, the couples after they get married, when they try to, have a baby, even before that, they start planning. How will we save money for the baby's education? How will we save money for the baby's medical needs, etc.? How will we save money for the baby's future? For that period also they start planning, even before the baby is born. So planning is the essential part of the human life. Without planning, a person ends up failing. Why? Because planning gives you a roadmap. Planning gives you a direction. Planning basically lights up your roadmap towards success. So keeping that in mind, our constitution makers also thought about planning, and that is why Planning Commission was established. And the era of planning started from April 1st, 1951. Now, as a developing nation, India, after it got independence, faced many challenges, not just the challenges related to states or the territories, etc., but also the challenges related to water shortages, augmenting the income of the people of the country, then pollution challenges that we still are facing, jobs providing employment to the nation, to the youth of the nation, untangle and open up the international trade, provide better housing facilities to the people who were deprived of those facilities because of partition, then augment the investment in the nation, look after the growth of the nation, economic growth, social growth, health of the nation, education of the nation. All of these challenges were mounting issues when it came to the post independence period of developing country like India. And the most important challenge that we faced, the key challenge that we faced, were that there were few resources that we had to use to basically provide welfare to a large amount of people. So the question comes, what were the objectives that were kept in mind when our leaders started thinking about planning when it comes to development or growth of the nation? So what were the objectives that they kept in mind before planning? The first important objective was economic development. Economic development, you can also write it here, is the primary goal of Indian planning. Always it has been the primary goal of Indian planning, economic development. And how do we as Indians measure economic development of our nation? The tools which are used to measure the economic development of our nation are increase in the India's gross domestic product and increase in the per capita income. These are the two measures which are used to see if the country is economically developing or not. This you have to remember for your prelims examination. Now, the second important objective of planning in our country is increase in employment. An essential goal of Indian economic planning is to better utilize the country's abundant human resources, that is the youth of the nation, by raising the employment level. When we provide them job, only then we can use these human capital or human resources of our nation, right? So second important objective is employment, increasing the employment. Now the third objective is very famous. You must have heard and read about it since the last 4 to 5 years in the newspaper, which is the slogan of our government, Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-sufficiency. India aspires to be self-sufficient in major commodities while simultaneously increasing the exports as well. And the fourth important objective is Arthik Sthirta, which is economic stability. So in addition to India's economic growth, India's economic planning aims for stable market conditions. So what do we understand by economic stability? Please write it down. It means stable market conditions. This is the true meaning of economic stability. This is important for your prelims examination also. So these are the four major objectives that our planners, economic planners, keeps in mind when they plan for our economy. Then apart from these major objectives, there are other objectives as well. For example, one of those objectives are social welfare, regional development, social justice. We have studied all these terms in our previous NCERT lectures. Sustainable development, that is development not just of the economy but taking into account the environmental development also. Increasing the standard of life, this is one of the key goals of India's economic planning, to increase the standard of living by raising the per capita income and ensuring equal distribution of income. Alright, so these are the objectives of planning. So these are the basic objectives that we have studied today. This is not included in the PDF of the lecture, so please take a screenshot or note down all of this in your registers. ये छोटे से जो शॉर्ट्स हमने बनाए हैं ना, ये आपके PDF में इंक्लूडेड नहीं है, तो इसको आप एक या तो स्क्रीनशॉट ले सकते हो या इसको आप अपने रजिस्टर में नोट डाउन कर सकते हो. This is going to help you a lot in your answer writing in mains. Now, when we have studied what is the meaning of planning, we have studied why planning started, we have studied what are the objectives of planning. Now, let us understand what are the different types of planning. First type is known as the indicative planning. This is the first type. Second is known as imperative or comprehensive planning. These are the two major kinds of planning. So when we talk about the first kind of planning, which is the indicative planning, basically here the indicative planning includes the proposal that is kept forward in the form of recommendations for achieving certain set of objectives. So when the committees are formed, when they put forward their recommendations, right, for regulating different sectors of the economy, that is a kind of indicative planning. And the best example to showcase or to reflect the indicative planning structure in an economy is the France's mixed economy system. Now here you need to remember, this is not the same as the planning, this mixed economy is not same as the planning that exists in other mixed economies. You know, it varies economy to economy. Yes, it also exists in India, but then it has a different form in India. Okay. Now what exactly is mixed economy? Mixed economy means simultaneous operation of public and private sectors, where both public sector and private sector coexist together. But here the private sector is, to a little extent is controlled by the government, through the way of quotas, license, prices, etc. These are different ways through which government exercises a little bit of control over the private sector also. So this is your indicative planning. So second is your comprehensive or imperative planning, which refers to a centralized planning and implementation system as well as resource allocation. And this kind of structure is used, or this kind of planning is used by the socialist economies or socialist countries. Now what exactly are the socialist countries? Where the state has complete control over all aspects of planning, where the government, or we can call it the state, has full control. जिस स्टेट का हर एस्पेक्ट ऑफ प्लानिंग पर फुल कंट्रोल होता है, उसको हम सोशलिस्ट इकोनॉमी या कंट्री बोलते हैं. Okay, so under this type of planning now, consumer sovereignty is surrendered. Consumers receive fixed volumes at fixed cost, and the government policies are very rigid. They are very difficult to change, and any change might have a negative impact on the economy also. So it's a very, rigid form of planning, this imperative planning, that you need to understand. These are the two basic types of planning. Please take a screenshot of this particular flow chart, because it's going to help you during your revision. So now when we study about the history of planning in India, first and mainly the concept of a planned economy, when we talk about this basic concept, I'll just write it down, yes, of a planned economy, ये जब हम इस concept की बात करते हैं, it emerged in the 1930s. 1930s में ये concept emerge होकर आया था. When our national leaders, they were very influenced by the socialist theory, which was followed in USSR. And USSR at that time, passed or implemented the 5-year plans. And that has impacted India's 5-year plans greatly. So 5-year plans at that time launched by USSR were a very big thing in front of the Indian nationalist leaders. And our nationalist leaders were very mesmerized and very, you can say, impressed by those 5-year plans. And so Sir M. Vishvesvaraya, he wrote Planned Economy in India. This was a book that he wrote in 1934, which presented a very constructive, very clear, very positive plan for India's growth over the next 10 years. This is important for prelims. They can here write 5 years. That would be wrong statement. It is 10 years. So basically इन्होंने एक plan बना कर दिया कि कैसे हम इंडिया की इकोनॉमी को डेवलप कर सकते हैं आने वाले 10 सालों में. ठीक है, पॉइंट क्लियर हो गया यहाँ तक? Alright. Now his main goal, what was the main goal of M. Visvesvaraya, or what was the core idea of Sir M. Visvesvaraya? His main goal was to devise a strategy for shifting labor from farm to industry. Agriculture से industry में labor को shift करना इनका main goal था. That is how he said that we can double the national GDP in the 10 years. Gross domestic product को आने वाले 10 सालों में हम double कर सकते हैं अगर हम agriculture sector से labor को industrial sector में shift कर दें. So you can say this was the, write it down, this was the first, write it down over here, this was the first very important, very substantial scholarly work when it comes to Indian economy. Scholarly work in the field of planning के फील्ड में जो सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट अहम स्कॉलरली काम हुआ है वो ये किताब के द्वारा हुआ है, प्लान्ड इकोनॉमी इन इंडिया. दिस इज अगेन इम्पोर्टेंट फॉर प्रीलिम्स. दे कैन गिव यू दिस स्टेटमेंट, द फर्स्ट सब्सटैंशियल स्कॉलरली वर्क इन द फील्ड ऑफ प्लानिंग इन इंडिया was, and they will give you the name of 4 books or 4 authors. So it was by M. Visvesvaraya through the book Planned Economy in India. So when we talk about planning or when we talk about development, what is your definition of planning? What do you understand? How can you explain planning in a layman's term to a particular person? मान लो आपके मम्मी आपसे पूछती हैं बैठ के कि भाई मुझे सिंपल ही समझाओ प्लानिंग क्या होती है. What exactly is planning? क्या सीखा तुमने अभी तक यूपीएससी की पढ़ाई कर रहे हो, बताओ मुझे प्लानिंग क्या है. अगर आपसे ऐसे मम्मी ने कभी पूछ लिया तो क्या समझाओगे उन्हें? How will you explain it to her? You will not cram the definition and blabber the definition in front of her. You will try to explain her in simple terms so that she knows that yes, you have analytically understood the definition of planning. So you can tell her that planning is an act or process of making or carrying out plans. Planning also means shaping something, giving a shape to certain object. For example, if you want to become an IAS officer, how can you give shape to your dream of becoming an IAS officer? Through planning only, right? So scheming, for example, if you are trying to open a business, or start a startup, establish a startup of your own, that also requires planning. So when you prepare a scheme for starting a startup or starting your own business, that also is planning. Okay, तो ये हो जाते हैं हमारा प्लानिंग. फॉर एग्जाम्पल गवर्नमेंट इज लॉन्चिंग सर्टन स्कीम्स, सो बेसिकली गवर्नमेंट इज प्लानिंग. जो भी ऑब्जेक्टिव होगा उस स्कीम का, गवर्नमेंट उस ऑब्जेक्टिव को अटेन करने के लिए उस पर्टिकुलर प्लान, उस प्रोग्राम को या पॉलिसी को लॉन्च करके एक तरीके से प्लान ही तो कर रही है. So this is the basic definition of planning that you need to make sure understand and make it very easy for the layman to understand this definition. Now planning involves development because you are planning to achieve your goals, and achieving goals is a kind of development for you. For example, a baby is, let's say, 1 year old. Okay, when the baby turns 4, you will see a development in the bones of the baby, the height of the baby, the speech of the baby, right? The hair of the baby. So that is development. When something changes for the good, that is development. Development means when something changes for good, that is development. ऐसा नहीं कि भाई कोई इंसान पहले अच्छा था अब बुरा बदतमीज हो गया है तो आप इसको डेवलपमेंट बोलेंगे क्योंकि चेंज तो हुआ. नहीं, डेवलपमेंट मतलब किसी अच्छी के लिए कोई चीज चेंज होती है तो उसको हम डेवलपमेंट बोलते हैं. एंड डेवलपमेंट इन इंडिया बेसिकली फोकसेस ऑन 2 पैरामीटर्स, इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ एंड सोशल एंड इकोनॉमिक जस्टिस. एक तो हमारी अर्थव्यवस्था बढ़े और सेकंड हम सोशली और ज्यादा इक्वल और जस्टिस माइंडेड लोग बने. तो ये होता है हमारा इंडियन, यू कैन से, डेफिनेशन ऑफ डेवलपमेंट. And development has different meanings for different sections. For example, for you, development can be career-wise. It can be if you become an IAS officer or IPS or IFS or IRS, and you have your own house, your father and mother are proud of you. This is the meaning of development for you. For someone who struggle for a meal in a day, if he or she gets the meal in particular day, or if his or her children get eat meal in a day, a proper meal in a day, that is development for that couple also. मान लो कोई बेचारा बहुत गरीब है और उसके लिए उसका डेवलपमेंट का डेफिनेशन यही है कि मुझे दिन में एक टाइम का खाना मिल जाए, या मुझे ना मिले मेरे बच्चों को तो मिल ही जाए, तो उस बंदे के लिए डेवलपमेंट वही हो गया ना. That is why it said development means differently, it has different meanings for different section. For example, a person has not seen school in his entire life, but he is able to afford the school fees of his or her children. That is development for that person. He is not thinking about becoming an IAS officer or having a luxurious meal, etc. No, he just wants his children to get educated. That is development for him. Okay, so development has different meanings for different people, and that is why whenever our constitution leaders discussed the idea of development, we saw different contradictions, different debates, conflicts, etc. And debates is the essence of the parliamentary form of government also. जहाँ debates है वहीं पर तो different viewpoints आएंगे, different viewpoints आएगा तो growth और development अपने आप ही आगे आएगा. But after independence, our nationalist leaders basically dependent on the West for the standard for measuring development. Development को कैसे measure करना है उसके लिए हम West की तरफ देखने लगे थे जब हमें independence मिली थी. And it was about, at that time when we got independence, development was about becoming modern. Becoming modern means becoming more industrialized because West had already been industrialized. Industrial revolution West में तो 18th century में ही आ गया था. तो हम जो West की तरफ देखते थे हमारा aim यही रहता था कि हम भी industrialized हो जाएं, because after industrialization the West had earned huge profits. So modernization basically included ideas of growth, material progress and scientific rationality as well. ठीक है, ऐसा नहीं है कि सुपरस्टिशन में रहकर हम आगे डेवलप हो रहे हैं, साइंटिफिक थिंकिंग हमें रखनी है. Growth, all these have been taken from the Western nations, material progress. And countries at that time, when we became independent, at that time countries were divided into three categories. There were developed nations like USA, UK. There were developing nations like India, China, and there were underdeveloped countries also like Africa. So all these three categories of nation basically were looking at to the the development in the sense of industrialization. So on the eve of independence, India had in its in front of itself two models of modern development to choose from. We had liberal capitalist model also in front of us, for example, which was prevailing in Europe and USA, and then we looked at the socialist model also, which was in USSR, and we were confused which model should we choose for our nation. इंडिपेंडेंस जैसे ही हमें मिली उस वक्त सबसे पहला क्वेश्चन यही था कि पूरे विश्व में दो तरीके के डेवलपमेंट मॉडल्स हैं, लिबरल कैपिटलिस्ट और सोशलिस्ट मॉडल. यूरोप और यूएसए को देखो तो लिबरल कैपिटलिस्ट मॉडल है, यूएसएसआर को देखो तो स्टेट का कंट्रोल है, सोशलिस्ट मॉडल है. हम कौन सा मॉडल चुने? सो व्हेन वी स्टार्टेड प्लानिंग, आवर प्लानर्स हैड कंसेंसस ऑन वन पॉइंट. All of them agreed at one point, that was development could not be left to the private actors, private individuals या private parties या private organizations के हाथों में हम development को कभी नहीं सौंपेंगे, because then they will look at their own benefit only. So whatever we do, whatever plan we adopt, we are never going to leave development in the hands of the private actors. There was the need for the government to develop and design or plan for development. तो यहाँ पर we established the planning commission for that. Planning commission was not set up by the constitution. Another important point for prelims. Planning commission constitution के द्वारा नहीं set up किया गया था. It was set up by a resolution of government of India in 1950. Now you must be wondering, planning commission was the first attempt for planning in India. That is wrong. Planning commission is not the first attempt towards planning in India. The first attempt towards planning in India was by setting up, write it down, the National Planning Committee. This National Planning Committee was established in 1938. This was the first attempt which was made to develop a national plan for India. And in that year, Congress President Subhash Chandra Bose, he established the National Planning Committee. So write it down. किसने establish किया इस National Planning Committee को? सुभाष चंद्र बोस जी ने. And it was chaired by, write it down, this question came in prelims examination. Please don't ignore these little facts. It was chaired by Jawaharlal Nehru ji. So they confused the students in the prelims examination by saying that National Planning Committee was established by Jawaharlal Nehru, and the students who just crammed all these information, he marked that answer that option correctly. But the correct answer was Subhash Chandra Bose. It was established by Subhash Chandra Bose, but it was headed or chaired by Jawaharlal Nehru. इसको establish किसके order पे किया गया? सुभाष चंद्र बोस के order पे किया गया. और सुभाष चंद्र बोस ने किसको इसका leader बनाया? जवाहरलाल नेहरू जी को. Okay. Now the committee's findings or the research of the committee was unable to be written. Only few papers were published. तो basically ये जो पहला attempt हमने किया था ये बस एक theoretical और verbal attempt था. It was not published. Okay. Then comes the second attempt towards planning. The second attempt towards planning was the Bombay Plan. And this Bombay Plan involved the minds of 8 very famous Bombay industrialists. Mr. J.R.D. Tata, G.D. Birla, A.D. Shroff, Purushottam Das Thakur Das, Lala Shri Ram, Kasturbha Lal Bhai, John Mathai, and Ardeshir Dalal. They were the very brilliant 8 Bombay industrialists who worked on a brief memorandum outlining a plan of economic development for India in 1944. This plan is called as, very famously, the Bombay Plan. तो इस प्लान को हम बोलते हैं बॉम्बे प्लान. बेसिकली द स्ट्रैटेजी ओवर हियर वाज, इसमें इस प्लान को बनाने के पीछे की स्ट्रैटेजी क्या थी? द स्ट्रैटेजी वाज फॉर डबलिंग, राइट इट डाउन, द पर कैपिटा इनकम in how many years? In 15 years, not 10 years, in 15 years. M. Vishvesvaraya wanted to double the GDP in 10 years. But here these 8 industrialists wanted to double the per capita income, not the GDP, the per capita income in 15 years, and they wanted to triple the national income in the same time frame in 15 years. तो वो चाहते थे कि 15 साल में हम पर कैपिटा इनकम को तो डबल कर दें और नेशनल इनकम को हम ट्रिपल कर दें 15 साल में. Despite the fact that Jawaharlal Nehru did not officially adopt the Bombay Plan, many of the principles of this Bombay Plan were incorporated into our later planning stages. We did not completely adopt this Bombay Plan. The next was the People's Plan. Now, this People's Plan was drafted on the basis of the philosophy of Marxist socialism. It was drafted by M.N. Roy, and the basic strategy of this particular plan was, basically it covered the 10-year span. Basically, उन्होंने बोला कि हम जो भी achieve करेंगे, whatever we will achieve in the next 10 years time period. And the top priority was given to agriculture in this plan. So through this plan, M.N. Roy said that we should nationalize all the agriculture and all the production parts of our nation. हम अपनी कंट्री में जो भी प्रोडक्शन करते हैं, जो भी एग्रीकल्चर से रिलेटेड एक्टिविटीज करते हैं, सबको नेशनलाइज कर दिया जाए. ये था पीपल्स प्लान. And the third important plan that we have, the fourth one actually, is known as the Gandhian plan. Now here the Gandhian plan basically was created by not Gandhiji but by Shriman Narayan, who was the principal of Wardha Commercial College. He created the Gandhian plan. So this Gandhian plan basically prioritized, write it down, it prioritized the economic decentralization. इसने प्रायोरिटी पे रखा इकोनॉमिक डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन को with a focus on रूरल डेवलपमेंट. यानी कि इकोनॉमिक को सिर्फ एक ही एरिया को, हमको सिर्फ इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर को ही नहीं डेवलप करना, हमको पूरी तरीके से हर सेक्टर, हर एरिया को डेवलप करना है. एंड फोकस हमें रखना है रूरल डेवलपमेंट पर through the development of cottage enterprises. So basically it was influenced by the thoughts of Gandhiji. That is why he named his plan as the Gandhian plan. Now the next plan that came into existence was the Sarvodaya plan in 1950, designed by Jai Prakash Narayan. It was influenced by both Vinoba Bhave's Sarvodaya idea, that is the welfare of everyone, and Gandhian plan. And the highlight of this plan was that we should focus on the agriculture sector and the cottage enterprise. And we should also bring land reforms, and we should also make sure that we are completely free from the usage of foreign technologies. But it was not possible. As we were developing, we had to take the help of certain foreign technologies and ideas in order to develop. So this plan also was not fully inculcated into our system. Now there were two very important steps that were taken, which was one, the Planning and Development Department established by the British Indian government in August 1944 under the leadership of a very famous industrialist called Ardeshir Dalal. However, before we got independence in 1946, this particular board or department was abolished. And when we got independence, the interim government that was established in our country established the Planning and Advisory Board in October 1946 to assess plans and future projects and make recommendations. And then after that, we got our Planning Commission in 1950. So Planning Commission is not the first step taken by our government to work on the development of the nation. Clear? यहाँ तक सारी points clear हो गए हैं? Right. Now, which kind of model India adopted when it comes to the part of development? Our model was the mixed economy model. Okay? हमने socialist path adopt किया, जिसको हम mixed economic model के नाम पे आगे हमने इसको turn किया, change किया. India also, on the other hand, has encouraged private businesses. That means both private and public partnership was there in India. And industry and the government had full control, almost at that time initially had full control over the private business also. Okay, at least in principle we had full control over the entrepreneurial and business activities in India. Now here we established the Planning Commission, as we all know, in 1950. Planning Commission was having the responsibility of making assessment of the plans that the government was passing, and also to assess the resources that we as nations have right now. How can we decrease the you can say hurdles in the path of economic achievement? How can we increase the deficient resources? How can we formulate plans for the most effective basically path towards the development of the nation. And that is how we came to our first 5-year plan in 1951 to 56. So post-independence, India began a 5-year plan program to make the most use of country's resources and to achieve rapid economic development. Now, economic planning was implemented in India in the form of 5-year plan. It was viewed as a development tool for a variety of reasons. And these first 5-year plans, basically here, K.N. Raj, who was a very young economist, he was also involved in the drafting of the plan. He basically argued that India should, hasten very slowly. It should move slowly for the first 2 decades. मतलब शुरू में हमें क्या करना है, शुरू के जो 20 साल है हमें बहुत फूंक फूंक के कदम रखना है. We have to be very careful in our plans, in our priorities, and very slowly, objectively, observing all the other countries in the world, we should take our steps. Because if we take the steps very fastly, without very speedily, without taking into consideration what other countries are doing, it might endanger our own democracy. So because anybody then can take advantage of our situation, so we have to observe, we have to learn from the other nations, then we have to frame very objectively and rationally our policies, and then we have to move forward. So we have to be very careful for the first 2 decades of our development. And the first 5-year plan sought to get country's economy out of the cycle of poverty. So our basic priority in the first 5-year plan was to take our nation out of the circle of poverty. So our target was the agrarian sector, including the investment in dams and irrigation. And in this period, we saw the construction of Bhakra Nangal Dam. The plan identified the pattern of land distribution, how the land should be distributed, what are the major obstacles in the way of agricultural growth. And we focused on agriculture and land reforms. And we said that both agriculture and land reforms are the key to country's development in the first 5-year plan. Okay, so basically what were the aims or goals of first 5-year plan? They were to raise the standard of living of the people of India. And for that, a high growth rate is required. For prosperity, there must be economic stability in our nation. An economy, we require an economy that is self-sufficient. हमें एक ऐसी economy चाहिए जो कि आत्मनिर्भर हो, self-sufficient हो. Reducing inequality, promoting social justice, and we need to make sure that our economy is modernizing. So these were, you can say, the goals of the first 5-year plan, and to achieve those goals, we focused on agriculture and land reforms. Okay, so basically K.N. Raj also thought that we have to target the root in order to make sure that the tree is strong. हमें roots पे, जड़ों पे focus करना है अगर हमें पेड़ मजबूत और पक्का चाहिए. So basic aim of the first 5-year plan was to increase the level of national income, which could be possible only if people saved more money than they spent. कैसे आप national income को बढ़ा सकते हो जब आप खर्चा कम करो, savings बढ़ाओ, but basic level of spending was very low in 1950s. ठीक है, यहाँ पर so it could not be reduced anymore. वैसे ही हमारी स्पेंडिंग की लिमिट नॉर्मली इकोनॉमी में बहुत ही कम थी उस टाइम पर. 1950s में कौन इतना खर्चा करता था? तो इससे ज्यादा क्या खर्चा कम करोगे? हाउ विल यू रिड्यूस स्पेंडिंग लेस देन दिस? During 1950s already the spending was less. So the planners thought, why not increase the savings? We should plan certain strategies so that this, consumers would be able to increase their savings. But that was also tough. Us time par we were just opening up. We just had got independence. What more policies or programs could we, economically formulate to increase the savings? Money was less in the hands of the people. They were spending so low. Why? Because they had less money. इतना कम खर्चा क्यों हो रहा था? पैसा भी तो कम था उस टाइम पर लोगों के पास. अब इतने कम पैसे में भी आप सेविंग्स उनकी कैसे बढ़ा सकते हो? दैट वाज वेरी टफ. सो द आंसर वाज वी शुड बेसिकली रिड्यूस द टोटल कैपिटल, इंक्रीज द टोटल कैपिटल स्टॉक, बट दैट वाज आल्सो लेस. जितने भी लोग एम्प्लॉयबल थे उनके कंपैरिजन में टोटल कैपिटल स्टॉक भी हमारा बहुत ही कम था. तो एट दैट टाइम प्लानर सेड स्लो एंड स्टेडी विंस द रेस. We should first target the agriculture sector now. Forget about everything else. Just make sure that the agriculture sector, the food producing stages is are strong. So the first 5-year plan preached patience. हमारे पास और कोई चारा नहीं था सिवाय पेशेंस के, कि हमें थोड़ी सी धैर्यता मेंटेन करनी थी, कि थोड़े सा धैर्य के साथ स्टेप लेने थे. And that is how our first 5-year plans basically went. Okay. So our focus, in the starting 8 5-year plans, now our focus was on building a very strong public sector through massive investment. Okay. Then comes the second 5-year plan. Now here in the second 5-year plan, we have our own very famous PC Mahalanobis. And according to his vision, basically, he wanted to bring quick structural transformation in the economy of our country. And how can we bring structural transformation? किसी चीज के structure को कैसे transform किया जा सकता है? By making changes simultaneously in all the possible sectors of our economy. Do not target only just the agriculture sector. Spread out. Target all the sectors in our economy. Only then the economy's structure can be changed. That was the vision of PC Mahalanobis. So basically we started investing more and more on heavy industries, but for that we lacked foreign exchange, and due to a lack of foreign exchange it could not be fully implemented. सेकेंड 5-year प्लान में ये था कि ऐसा करते हैं क्यों ना हर सेक्टर में इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हैं, हर सेक्टर को एक्सपैंड करो, इन्वेस्ट इन ऑल द सेक्टर्स, एक्सपैंड ऑल द सेक्टर्स. बट हाउ कुड वी डू दैट? वी लैक्ड फॉरेन एक्सचेंज. The number of targets has to be reduced then. अब जब हमारे पास पैसे की थोड़ी सी कमी थी तो इसका मतलब टारगेट को थोड़ा कम करना पड़ेगा. But we basically focused on hydroelectric power plants. हमने यहाँ पर hydroelectric power plants को नहीं छोड़ा. So in Durgapur, in Rourkela, in Bhilai, we have steel mills, we have power plants. That is because of the second 5-year plan only. Okay, and this plan model is also known as, write it down, the Nehru Mahalanobis model of planning. ओके, इसको हम नेहरू महालनोबिस मॉडल ऑफ प्लानिंग भी बोलते हैं. इट वाज यूज्ड एंड बेसिकली दिस प्लानिंग फोकस्ड ऑन, राइट इट डाउन, क्विक इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन. इस मॉडल में हमने फोकस किया जल्द से जल्द इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन करो. वी नीड टू फोकस ऑन ग्रोथ ऑफ बेसिक एंड हेवी इंडस्ट्रीज. Okay, so here we basically, our goal was the socialist pattern of society. The government imposed taxes on imports. Why? To protect our domestic industries, to protect the environment. We started helping both the public sector industries, the private sector industries. So both public and private partnerships started increasing. Right, दोनों ही public sector industries और private sector industries को हमने grow करना शुरू किया. But there were certain issues. Our country was already technologically backward, so we had to rely on we had to spend more and more foreign exchange to buy technology from the global market. क्योंकि हमारी कंट्री उस वक्त ना इनिशियली टेक्नोलॉजिकली थोड़ी पिछड़ी हुई थी, तो हम बाहर से चीजें खरीदते थे, टेक्नोलॉजी लाते थे, तो इसके लिए हमें ज्यादा फॉरेन एक्सचेंज चाहिए था. एंड आई टोल्ड यू दैट फॉरेन एक्सचेंज वाज लैकिंग इन इंडिया. And here, because we were more focused on industries, heavy industries, we lacked focus, or we reduced our focus from the agriculture sector, and that is why India faced acute food shortage during the implementation of second 5-year plan. That could be seen, the effect of second 5-year plan could be seen in the third 5-year plan, wherein we faced droughts, wars, etc. Okay, point clear हुआ. Many people thought that the second 5-year plan lacked agrarian strategy, and that is why we suffered from shortages of grains. The rural India suffered a lot during the implementation of the second 5-year plan. Now in our economy now, India did not accept the capitalist model of development. Development was, in the capitalist model of development, the development is left entirely to the private sector. We did not do it. During the formation of our constitution only, we decided we will never leave our entire economy in the hands of private sector. And we also did not follow the socialist model. What is socialist model? Where private property is abolished and all production is controlled by the government. That was also denied by India. So we took certain elements from capitalist model and certain elements from socialist model, and we cooked a khichdi, which is known as the mixed economy. Now mixed economy is also open to criticism. Now in mixed economy, the agriculture, trade and industries are, much of the agriculture, trade and industry are in the hands of private industries, private parties, and state is controlling the important heavy industries. So here both private and public industry, the private government, the private party and the public, that is the government, right, both are having equal participation in the managing of the economy. That is the mixed economy model. इसको हम बोलते हैं mixed economy model. Okay, and what were the outcomes of the mixed economy model? Land reforms. Okay, यहाँ पर yes, we focused on the land reforms, but land reforms did not take place effectively in most parts of the country. Second, political power remained in hands of land owning classes. बिकॉज लैंड रिफॉर्म्स इंप्लीमेंट तो किए, बट ऐसा नहीं कि हर कंट्री के हर पार्ट पे इंप्लीमेंट अच्छे से हो गए, तो इसीलिए कुछ लोगों के हाथों में पॉलिटिकल पावर रह गई. Big industrialists continued to benefit and thrive while poverty did not decrease much. And then there was unequal development. Mixed economy में ये भी हो जाता है कि कभी कभी unequal development होती है. Some people, certain section of people become politically more powerful. So we are here, also highlighting the negatives of, because over here you can see mixed economy model is also open to criticism. That is why we are highlighting the issues which are, you can say, embedded into the mixed economy model. Now there are two very important concepts in the planning of our economy. First is about green revolution, second is about white revolution. You must have heard about the green revolution. This particular initiative was started by Norman Borlaug in 1960s. That is why he is known as the father of green revolution in the entire world. And he also won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970 because of his contribution, because of his work in developing high yielding varieties of wheat. And in India, Green Revolution was led by M.S. Swaminathan. Basically, Green Revolution, why it was implemented? Because we focused more on industrial growth. That is why we were ignoring agricultural sector, and that resulted into, you can say drought, famine, food shortages. So that is why, to increase the production of food grains, we started the Green Revolution. In India, it was basically led by M.S. Swaminathan. Okay. So what were the objectives of Green Revolution? First was the short-term objective, basically to reduce the hunger crisis or to remove hunger crisis during the second 5-year plan that we discussed above. Second objective was a long-term objective, basically agriculture को modernize करना, rural development, industrial development, सारी raw material इन सभी areas को साथ लेकर चलना. Third was employment, to provide employment in not just the industrial sector but also in the agricultural sector. And when we are increasing the production of food grains, the another important objective of Green Revolution is scientific studies. How can we better the health of food grains? हम कैसे food grains की health को बढ़ा सकते हैं, अच्छा कर सकते हैं? And globalization of agriculture in the world, that was also the objective of Green Revolution. And then we study the White Revolution. Now, आपने जरूर, in the Hindu newspaper, there are every day there are, small cartoonistic ads in the Hindu newspaper with this Amul girl. Right, आपने एक slogan भी सुना होगा, utterly, butterly, delicious, Amul, right? So this slogan is also very famous in India. Now it is also an example of White Revolution. Operation Flood, you might have heard about it. It is also known as the White Revolution. It was one of the biggest rural development program, and Amul also played a very significant role in the success of the White Revolution. Dr. Verghese Kurien, he basically is known as the milkman of India. He revolutionized the food processing sector in India. He had a very good understanding of the Indian farming sector. And because of that, he gained the trust of the farmers community in India. And basically he developed the Indian dairy sector greatly. So Operation Flood or White Revolution was launched in 1970. It was world's largest dairy development program. And it was also a landmark project of India's national dairy. It transformed India from a milk deficient nation into a world's largest milk producing nation. हमने US को भी 1998 में ना सरपास कर दिया था milk production में. ये point आप याद रखिएगा. This was a very great achievement of that time. Okay, and it was launched to help the farmers to develop control over their own resources. Farmers को develop करने के लिए mission को launch किया गया था ताकि अपने resources पर उनका खुद का control हो. ओके ताकि वो अपने रिसोर्सेज अपने खुद के कंट्रोल के साथ क्रिएट कर सकें. मास प्रोडक्शन ऑफ मिल्क वाज अंडरटेकन ड्यूरिंग दिस पर्टिकुलर revolution. The objectives of Operation Flood was increase the milk production, increase the rural income, fair prices for consumers, increased income and reduced poverty among farmers. That was, and also to make sure that the supply of milk is steady in the nation. This was the objective of the White Revolution. These days we have our doodh wala bhaiyas who deliver milk to our homes, and we take it for granted. We do not really express our gratitude that we are getting milk every day. हमारे घर में दूध आ रहा है, इसका gratitude आपको होना चाहिए, क्योंकि एक टाइम पर हम milk deficient nation हुआ करते थे. छोटी छोटी चीजों का ना हमें gratitude नहीं है, इसीलिए हम ना परेशान रहते हैं. इसीलिए छोटी छोटी बीमारियां बन के आती हैं, क्योंकि मन में ना हर चीज को लेकर कंप्लेन है पर gratitude नहीं है. भाई इतना बुरा है तो कुछ अच्छा भी तो होगा. कि सब कुछ बुरा ही दिखता है हमें। एक टाइम पर जहां हमारे देश में दूध की कमी थी, जहां पर कन्हैया पैदा हुए हैं, राइट, मक्खन, बटर, दूध, मलाई सब पड़ते थे उस टाइम पर। एक टाइम ऐसा आया जब दूध की ही कमी हो गई हमारे नेशन में। उसके बाद हमने ये रेवोल्यूशंस के थ्रू अपने नेशन को यूएस से भी आगे पहुंचा दिया इन टर्म्स ऑफ दी मिल्क प्रोड्यूसिंग नेशन। तो हमें ग्रैटिट्यूड होना चाहिए यार, थोड़ा सा थैंकफुलनेस होनी चाहिए हमारे अंदर। एंड अमूल ऑल्सो प्लेड अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल इन द व्हाइट रेवोल्यूशन। द अमूल ट्रिनिटी, वर्गीज क्यूरीन, श्री त्रिभुवन दास, किशीभाई पटेल, हरिचंद मेघा दलाया, they were the key figures in making this initiative a success. And that is why we also celebrate National Milk Day. हर साल 26 नवंबर को हम National Milk Day celebrate करते हैं. This is also the birth, 2021 में जो celebrate हुआ था, that was the 100th birth anniversary of Dr. Verghese Kurian. Okay? हम बोलते हैं ना आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव. It was a part of that also. So we need to understand these little things, these little days that we celebrate, they are very deep, meaning wise. We need to be very grateful, we need to express our gratitude towards these people who helped us to become self-sufficient. So this was your chapter for today. Let's look at the homework. Question number 1 is, what was the Green Revolution? Mention 2 positive and 2 negative consequences of Green Revolution. Second question is, explain White Revolution and explain the first 5-year plan. Third question is, what is planning? List down the difference between first 5-year plan and second 5-year plan. Very easy, direct questions, you can answer it. तो इसको homework पे आपको submit करने हैं अपने answers. Okay, so make sure that you read and study this chapter again yourself and only then try to answer the question. I hope I have explained in such a manner that still you can attempt the question without revising. आप इन क्वेश्चंस को अपने नॉलेज के बेसिस पर थोड़ा सा अटेम्प्ट तो कर ही सकते हो. मुझे लगता है मैंने इतना तो एक्सप्लेन किया ही है आपको, राइट? So this was your chapter for today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. I felt it very nice, right? This chapter is really interesting, very stimulating. हमारे दिमाग को काफी स्टिमुलेट करता है सोचने के लिए. So on this note, we are wrapping up the session. Be grateful towards every little thing that is around you, even your parents. Your parents are the factors, they are the reason why you are able to study this lecture today. अगर वो नहीं होते तो आप नहीं होते, आप नहीं होते तो प्लान कहाँ से आता यूपीएससी देने का या ये पढ़ने का. इसलिए हर चीज के प्रति थोड़ा सा ग्रेटफुलनेस दिखाएं. On this note, we are wrapping up the lecture. Thank you.